everyone, and welcome to my series Card Making on a Budget. For this video, I made this card with butterflies and I colored it with alcohol markers. But the coloring method is completely up to you. So, what makes this card a budget-friendly card? Well, I got the inspiration from Christina Werner. She made these cards and I really liked the one in the middle. However, she used a stamp set from Simons Stamp. I think she even designed it. I live in Sweden. Simons Stamp sells only in the US, at least to my knowledge. It also costs over $24, which is way over my budget. And with the shipping costs, I cannot afford this. And I guess I'm not alone. Plus, I don't even care about butterflies that much to spend so much money. I just like the card idea. I did not let this to discourage me, because I know that most of the time you can find an alternative. And I did find one. Not long ago, I was actually looking for images of butterflies on the website freepik.com. And I remembered that I saw a set of images with butterflies that were very similar to the stamp set by Simons Stamp. I will leave the link to this set in the description. The images are free to download. A quick information about the downloading and printing. You can skip this, there are chapters in the description. On this website, you can download files like JPEG, but if you have a software like Photoshop, Affinity Photo, or similar, they also have the option of EPS file, which is something I prefer to use, because you can then adjust it in the software. You can make the images bigger, you can copy single images, or even remove things that you don't want. So I opened it in my software. I'm using Affinity Designer. I first grouped each butterfly together because each line is separate, and then I picked the butterflies I liked the most, and I copied it to another document that I was using for printing. I was using the size A5, which is a half sheet of typical cardstock. I made one butterfly slightly bigger than the others, and I printed out 6 butterflies altogether. So let's start coloring. I'm using alcohol markers from Auto New. You can use any other alcohol markers. This is just what I have. And I picked pinks, yellows, and greens. These were the only colors that I had that would work with the colors of my background, which I will be making a little bit later. I picked the colors randomly. I didn't really think about it too much. There was one butterfly where I had to change the color because it blended too much with the background, but nothing major. And I colored one section or multiple sections in different colors. I will speed up the video a little bit more and play some music so you can see the coloring, and I will be back once I'm done. I will be creating the background, which was quite a challenge. The coloring is done. It was a lot of fun to do. Next, I cut out all the butterflies. I fussy cut them with my scissors. And by magic of editing, you do not need to suffer watching me doing so. I cut the butterflies right along the black lines without any white gaps. But around the edge, you could still see the white of the paper. So what I did here, I took a black alcohol marker and I carefully went along the edges of each butterfly. This covers up the white and overall cleans up the look. This took me a while. Actually, all the coloring and the cutting does take some time. This is perfect to catch up on your favorite TV shows or, if you're like me, YouTube videos. The next thing I needed to do, or actually I wanted to do, is to create a background. Christina made a green background and I actually created it. You can see it here. I did not have the inks she used, so I used Distress ink. I used the ink Shabby Shutters, but I decided not to use this background because I did not want to copy Christina that much, even though I used completely different products. I decided to use pink Distress inks. I combined the Tattered Rose and Victorian Velvet. I was trying to get the color of one of the pinks that I used for the butterfly. You could also use a cold cardstock, but I did not have any color that would fit. I actually had troubles applying the inks, especially the Tattered Rose, because this is a very light ink. It might not look like it in the video because I sped it up, but I really had to put some elbow grease into the application. I don't know if it was the cardstock or the inks need re-inking, although I hardly ever use it, so it should not need. Or maybe it was the sponge because I used a new sponge. Probably it was a combination of all of it. I was really struggling to get a good coverage, but in the end, I managed. I started with the Tattered Rose, I covered the whole background, and then I lightly applied the Victorian Velvet. After that, it was still not the color I wanted, so I applied one more layer of the Tattered Rose, and even though it was quite blotchy, it was okay. I will be covering it up with the butterflies anyway, and you won't really see it. And despite of struggling, I really like the background. The background is done. Now let's adhere the butterflies. And the greeting. I picked this greeting. It says "With love." I have a bunch of greetings that I pre-made and I also fussy cut them. This is going to be my card for Mother's Day, and I did not have a small enough greeting that says Mother's Day, so I picked something that is more neutral. I first placed the butterflies onto the cardstock to roughly see how I wanted them to be positioned, and then one by one I started adhering them on top of the pink panel. I started with a big butterfly. I used the double-sided foam tape so they are all a little bit raised, and I attached it onto the back of the butterfly. And then I placed it on top of the panel. Next, I adhere the greeting so I accidentally don't forget about it. The remaining butterflies are going to be sticking out and I'm going to be cutting them out. And I don't like when the foam tape is on the parts that are sticking out. Not only because sometimes it tends to stick to the scissors when cutting, but I also don't want to see the tape once it's cut out. You know, when you tilt it and you see it right at the edge of the card. So what I did here, I placed the butterfly where I wanted it, I flipped it over and I made pencil marks, and I only placed the double-sided foam tape on the parts that are going to be on top of the panel, leaving a small gap so you don't see the tape when you tilt it. But this is completely optional, you do it your way. All the butterflies are adhered. To cut the excess, the butterflies that are sticking out, I used scissors. You could also use a paper trimmer if that's easier for you. There were a few empty spaces between the butterflies that bothered me a bit, so I wanted to fill it out. I found this stamp set where there was a bee and a flower that fit perfectly. You could also find a digital image, And I also used some of the cutouts of the butterflies and I adhered them along the right side. I did this off camera, or at least I did not press the record button, but I think it's quite straightforward. I just placed the images between the butterflies. Next, I adhered the card on top of a card base. I used a white cardstock for the card base and I adhered the panel using a liquid glue. And here is the finished card. I actually hardly ever make exact copy of a card under the Craft-Made. Even though I used different products, it still looks very similar to the card Christina made. But for some reason, her card really caught my eye and I really wanted to make it. I would really appreciate if you gave this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you would like to see photos of the cards, hop over to my blog, link is in the description. Thanks so much for watching and I will see you in my next video very soon.